Got it. Okay, thank you. Well, welcome everyone to our Career Services webinar for the Bush School of Government and Public Service at Texas A&M University. We got the recording started here, and then we'll have a chance at the end to stop the recording and answer any questions that you have that are specific to your situation. So just be aware of that. I'm going to be on here. My name is Matt Upton. I'm the Assistant Dean for Graduate Career and Student Services, and I've been at the Bush School for 21 years. Ashley Treadway is on here. She's our Assistant Director for Admissions. She's going to jump off here in just a few minutes. She's got other things she's going to take care of, but she's making sure that I do everything right today, keeping me in line, and so we'll go from there. But this webinar is a little bit more specific. If you've been to one of our previous webinars that give you an overview of our graduate programs, this one is intended to really spend a little more time talking about career services, potential careers that you might be thinking about. So we'll get started there, but be thinking of any questions that you might have, and we'll have an opportunity, like I said at the end, that you can ask me any of those questions, and we'll stop the recording for you to be able to do that. There we go. That's me. I don't think it looks much different than I do now. So maybe a little more hair in that picture than I do now. But we're going to cover today just common public service careers. A lot of people don't, when they think of public service, they have a very specific set of careers that they're thinking about. But I hope to expand your thoughts about what a public service career might look like. We also want to talk to you about why graduate school is something you should consider for your career in public service. There's a lot of conversation right now in the media and in other places about the value of higher education. Is it necessary? Is a graduate degree necessary to be successful? And we'll talk about that so that you can make a quality decision. I'll give you a little bit of a preview. I don't think it's always necessary in every situation, but we're going to talk to you about why we think it is a benefit in public service. We'll talk to you, that'll involve some of the cost benefit analysis. We know that there's a cost associated with graduate school, so we want to give you good information so that as you make that decision, you can think about, is the cost that I'm going to cover, is it going to provide the benefit that I'm hoping to get out of that? We'll talk about our resources within the Bush School specifically. We'll talk about some of the internships and employment our students have done, both in the last year or so, but also historically. We'll talk about how we cover professionalism, marketable skills, and we're going to talk to you about networking. We think that networking is a really key component to career services, and Texas A&M University is known for the Aggie Network, so we would be remiss to not cover that topic while we have you all here today. So if you are interested in any careers related to the following areas, you're in the right place today. And you might see some things on here that are a little bit surprising to you. Most people, when they think of public service, they think of things like security and intelligence, nonprofits and philanthropy, government service, maybe even human rights and law that you see down across the bottom. But not everyone thinks about the fact that every organization, public or private, has to know how to communicate effectively, communicate their mission, communicate the work that they're doing. They also have a major public relations role to play. Can you imagine if in the public sector there weren't public relations people? Well, maybe it'd be a little bit different. We don't have as much spin on some of the different topics that we hear about, but there are people that communicate, and that's important. Social entrepreneurship and business are something that are key. We need people who know accounting and finance and marketing and entrepreneurship within the public sector. Those are not limited to private sector employers or innovation organizations. Energy and environment, if you have an expertise or knowledge of energy and the environment and environmental policy and energy policy or energy implications, maybe you come from an engineering background, education, development and conflict resolution. What's going on in developing countries and how do we help them put their best foot forward, whether we are a governmental organization or a non-governmental organization, how do we help them do that? And then science and technology. Obviously, there's a lot of information. The COVID pandemic was a great example of when science and technology came to the forefront. What do we hear in the news today? We hear about artificial intelligence, AI all the time, cybersecurity, cyber attacks. We hear about, I was looking in the news today, We see things on car recalls and food recalls all the time, right? Well, those are both science and technology related topics. And so those are important. And those are all things that you can do in the public sector. So where are some of the sectors that we're talking about? When we say public service, what kinds of jobs are we thinking about? Well, we're talking about jobs in nonprofit organizations. Remember that in the United States, nonprofits are a governmental tax classification. The Internal Revenue Service identifies nonprofit organizations. We typically think of 501c3 nonprofit organizations, but internationally, we refer to similar types of organizations as non-governmental organizations. So they're providing a good to the public, but they're not part of the government. They may partner with governments, but they're not actually part of the government. So that's what an NGO is. For those of you that are international, you know that, but some of us in the United States are not as familiar with that term, NGO. The federal government, and yes, in the United States and for a graduate school in the US, we are talking primarily the US federal government, but we recognize that some of our international students, their hope and their dream is to go back to take their learning from the United States and their learning here in this graduate program and take it back to their government and utilize that in their federal government. So we're not limited to just US government. State government, obviously in the United States, states have states' rights, and it's a very important part of what government looks like. Local government, how cities are governed, how counties are governed, how regions are governed. If you're from Louisiana, how parishes are governed. Government contractors, there are a number of government contractors that do work. You'd get a paycheck from a private company, but you're doing work within the government. Oftentimes, we've got former students who are in the same office, and one is paid by, I'll give you an example, USAID, U.S. Agency for International Development. They hire a lot of government contractors. So we've got former students that are often sitting in the same office space across from each other. One is paid by the federal government, one is paid by the government contractor. They're doing the same work. Consulting. A lot of times we think of consulting as being a private sector focused initiative or industry, but it's actually something that a number of government and nonprofit organizations utilize as well. We recognize that some students are going to find their way into the private industry as well. And when we talk about private industry, we're talking about what we think of, Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies or smaller companies, smaller organizations. And then obviously you can go into any number of fields that you want to go in, even with a graduate degree in a specific area like public or international affairs. So the next question people have, and you'll see how we're building this out, we think a little more broadly, and then we begin to get to this slide where we share with you some of the titles. Now, I will tell you, as someone who's worked in human resources before, titles can be tricky, right? Because a title in one organization may mean something very different in another organization. So keep that in mind as you think about this. This may not be applicable across the board in every public sector job title, but it is something for you to get an idea of the types of titles. So one of the regular titles that we see jobs for our our graduates go into are analyst jobs. Now they could be a budget analyst, they could be an intelligence analyst, they could be a performance analyst or a risk and compliance analyst. So again, a number of opportunities that have that title analyst, but they're doing very different things. Sometimes coordinator or manager might be used. And we'll talk about manager here in just a few minutes, but communications managers or emergency management coordinators, public health, after school programs, working with the aging population, community development, or elder care or elder population care. Consultants, we talked about that a few minutes ago. Oftentimes our students that go into consulting jobs are working for cities or counties or doing consulting projects for cities and counties or for the federal government or even at the state level. And then sometimes they're doing it at the nonprofit level as well. Developer and director, those could be everything from director of policy and protocols to developer of health resources within organizations, maybe health-based organizations or health policy-focused organizations. Investigators, we've had graduate students who've gone to work as criminal investigators, but also social equity investigators, And so those are the types of things that you might see. You might also find people doing investigative work in areas like Texas child welfare or children welfare programs across different states. Managers, depending on your level of previous experience, you could graduate and go into a manager position for a nonprofit organization or a legislative office. You could be a city manager or a program or project manager. And then researchers for various policy fields or different think tanks. And we'll talk about some of those specific organizations as we get through here in just a minute. And then some other titles that you'll see: auditor, specialist, planners, assistant. We do have police, fire chiefs, those types of roles that people go into. And obviously you can see that the list goes on and on. So let's talk about why you might consider graduate school and why we think it's a good thing. The first thing that we will say is that really graduate school is an opportunity to build upon your undergraduate education. And that doesn't matter if you have been out for 1 year or if you're going to graduate in the next year or if you've been out for 5 or 10 years. It's still an opportunity. Now, if you've been out for 5 or 10 years, you're also going to bring into graduate school your knowledge, skills, and abilities that you've developed in the workplace. And so that's going to be something that we can also continue to build upon. But when I think about it from a career services standpoint, I often talk in terms of knowledge, skills, and abilities. We refer to those as KSAs. Used to be used in the federal government a lot. People would say, well, you've got to write your KSA statement. You've got to tell me what your knowledge, skills, and abilities are. You don't hear KSAs as much anymore in those job applications, but that's how I still think about it because I think it helps you begin to break down what you bring to the table. So when I talk about knowledge, we're talking about that knowledge of specific things: budgeting, human resources, communications, policy analysis, policy implementation, policy assessment, budget development, all of those types of things. Skills, on the other hand, are then how we actually apply that knowledge, right? Actually putting together and writing a budget, utilizing those skills that you develop, those writing skills to write grants, utilizing those quantitative method skills to analyze data, put together data and analyze it, and begin to share that with other people. Maybe you've developed a regional expertise of a certain region of the world or a certain region of the country you live in, and you can take that regional expertise and apply it to the things that you're doing. And then abilities are what we tend to think of more as those soft skills. So they can be kind of a mix of hard and soft skills, right? So for us, we're thinking in terms of professionalism. Our writing, we have a writing program here that is there to support you. They're not going to edit your papers for you, but they teach you this wonderful technique called bluff writing, and that's bottom line up front. So for those of you that are in the working world, you may be very familiar with that, or you may have heard of that or something similar to that. But a good example of that is we want to make sure that our students can take a lot of information, condense it into something that's manageable and digestible, and then share that with other people, whether that's their constituents, their boss, or anyone else that needs that data. I'll give you a good example. One of our former students, he's now an assistant city manager in Victoria, Texas. He's been a city manager before that as well. But I remember him telling me when he first got out of graduate school, he was working for the city of San Antonio, and his boss came to him and said, I need you to take this 300-page document and I need a one-pager on it. And he looked at him like, a one-pager on a 300-page document? Okay. So he did all the work that he could do, tried to get it down to 1 page, and he got it to 6. And he took it to his boss and he said, okay, I got it down from 300 down to 6 pages. And his boss looked at it and read it, said, that's really good. I said 1 page, and handed it back to him. And he turned around and walked away. So the individual, Derek, had to go back in and figure out, now how do I take these 6 pages and make it 1 page? Those are the kinds of skills that we're going to teach you in graduate school and try to help you do that. We also offer you the opportunity to do some self-reflection, right? We have a leadership development program, so you're going to have the opportunity at the Bush School, and I know other graduate programs offer similar programs, to do your StrengthsFinder assessment and also your Gallup StrengthsFinder and also Myers-Briggs type indicator. Those are the two that we've chosen to use here. Other places, or if you in the working world, you may have experienced things like Hogan assessment. You may have done a 360 review in your annual review. And so those are all things that we want to continue to give you the opportunity to develop so that you know a little bit more about yourself and how that impacts how you work with other people. Research, you're going to get the opportunity to do some research in graduate school. No real surprise there. Group work projects, yes, just like in the working world, you're going to have to work with other people. You might be able to work on some things by yourself, but the reality is we want to make sure that you're well prepared to know how to work with a group. And that's where those self-assessments come in, right? If we know about ourselves, then when I work with a group of people, I know how I can work with other people. I know how to handle conflict with other people. I might know how to better manage my time. And we actually utilize that in our capstone projects at the end of your graduate program, the second year of your graduate program. We have our leadership development staff member go in and show you where everyone else falls in your group on the Myers-Briggs type indicator. And we talk about your strengths. And then we give you information about how are the personalities represented in this small group of 6 to 8 students going to impact the work that you're doing this year. And it really helps our students work well together and overcome some of those challenges that come up when you're working together in small groups. We have a number of speakers and conferences that are available here from our research institutes, research centers, and our academic departments. In our graduate programs, we do have some general expectations about professionalism. Actually, I don't manage that or maintain that. Some people think that that's my office in career and student services, that we're the dress code police around here, and that's not true. That's actually something that over the years, our graduate students have really taken the responsibility for that. And they say, you know what, we want to make sure that we're dressed professionally. It doesn't mean you wear a suit and a tie every day, but dress professionally, typically business casual, so that when speakers come in or guests come in, they see professional students, and it also to your professional network, whether that's with relevant organizations like the International City Management Association or the Texas City Management Association, intelligence organizations, the Association of Fundraising Professionals to give you additional experience in that, Alexander Hamilton Society. So opportunities to get out there and really expand your professional network as well. We'll talk about Texas A&M and the Bush School and our alumni, and then we also offer school and university career support, and we'll talk more about that here in just a few minutes. So a lot of people want to know, is it really worth the cost of going to graduate school? I would tell you that yes, for the most part, there is a benefit to going to graduate school upon your bottom line salary when it comes to the public sector. And the best example that we can provide you is in the federal government, and we'll talk about that specific example here in just a few minutes. But salary ranges do vary across different fields. Obviously, a nonprofit organization in a small community is not going to be able to pay you the same thing that a nonprofit organization in a major metropolitan area is going to be able to pay you, right? A nonprofit organization may require that you do some grant writing and some fundraising to make sure that your salary is covered as well. Whereas working in the federal government or in state or local government, there are typically more structured salary information and more structured salary bands that you can look at. But our graduate students, when they finish here, they do go on average, I would say our average starting salary across those different ranges is no lower than $55,000 to $65,000 a year. That's a starting salary. Depending on your level of education, level of experience, you might be able to go even higher than that. But there's also a strong quality of life satisfaction. So let's give you a specific example. In the federal government, you have your pay the GS pay scale, and you can look all of this up if you just type in GS, federal GS pay scale, you can pull it up. Now, I'm talking about a starting pay scale for people working for the federal government based in Washington, D.C. There is locality pay depending on where you're based at. So again, you can work for the federal government and not live and work in DC. So just keep that in mind. But a DC starting salary, if you graduate with a bachelor's degree and you go to work for the federal government, you have no previous experience. You are typically going to start at what's called the grade 7 or GS7 step 1. And that starting salary is right now is $55,924. If, on the other hand, you take 2 years to go to graduate school and you finish a master's degree, you're typically going to start no lower than a GS9 step 1, which is $68,405. So almost a $13,000 pay increase, just under a $13,000 pay increase for that 2-year graduate degree. So earning that master's degree helps you qualify for the additional $12,000 to $13,000, and that's just going to continue to go up. Many of our graduate students do find jobs that pay $100,000 or more within a reasonable time frame. We're talking 5 to 7 years. Again, depending on your level of engagement, I can't predict that for you. I wish that I could. It'd be really great if I could do that for you. But our graduate students do very well when they finish up. I will also tell you, I believe that there is a misnomer that the public sector does not pay well. Does it pay what working for Berkshire Hathaway is going to pay? Probably not, right? You're probably not going to make what you might make at Google or Amazon, but it is also about the satisfaction that you have, the quality of life that you have, and it does pay well. Even in the federal government, we're seeing that our graduate students are being promoted into higher paying jobs faster than they ever have before because of the number of people retiring in the government. So we had the highest level of government compensation range and employment is called the senior executive service. We had a student who was senior executive service when she was, I think, between 33 and 34 years old, which if you talk to some of our faculty members who are practitioners, they'll tell you it took them almost their entire career of 20 to 30 years in the federal government to get to senior executive service. And now people are able to get there much faster. Now, Caitlin came directly from undergrad into our graduate program and then went to work in the federal government. And she did some things like she was part of a program that allows for fast promotion within the federal government called the Presidential Management Fellows Program. But so I would say she's the exception, not the rule, but it is possible as you think about the cost of going to graduate school and the benefits that come about in your salary and the quality of life. So let me just tell you a little bit about career services at the Bush School. So each year we survey our graduates, and we also do this in conjunction with our colleague schools at other NASPA and APSEA graduate programs. So if you've been in our previous webinars, you know that NASPA is an professional organization for graduate programs in public policy and public affairs administration. And APSEA is the Association of Professional Schools of International Affairs. So we all agree that we will post our employment statistics based on a 6-month post-graduation timeline. So the information that you see here is gathered at 6 months post-graduation. How many of our graduates reply to our employment survey and how many of them are employed? So we typically have a 90 to 95% response rate. Our employment rate for 2023, which is the most recent one, is that our graduates, 89 to 99% of them are employed in a related career field within 6 months of graduating. Why 6 months? Well, sometimes people don't start their job search until after they graduate. Sometimes it's they're waiting on a security clearance. We don't actually count them as employed until they are on the job. So if you're someone wanting to work for the Department of Homeland Security and you have to wait on a security clearance, well, I will list you on my list as having a pending clearance, but I don't actually list you as employed until you've started that job. So you can see in the public administration program, so let's just focus on the 2 blue columns for right now, the primary areas of employment for graduates of our public administration program are state and local government, nonprofit organizations, and the federal government. You will then see we do have some people at different times who work for government contractors work in the private sector. Continuing education, what do we mean by that? We mean people who are going on to either a PhD program typically, or going on for law school or something along those lines. Every once in a while, we'll get someone who goes to medical school, but most of the time it's law or on for a PhD program after that. Then you'll see in our international affairs program, it looks a little bit different. Not surprising, right? Our two concentrations in international affairs are national security and diplomacy and international development and economic policy. So no real surprise that we don't have a ton of people going to work in state and local government. Although in major states, in border states, in states that have ports in them, we do see an increasing number of those operations having intelligence and Homeland Security divisions within their state government. In Texas, Texas Department of Public Safety has an intelligence division. And so we've had some graduates from our international affairs program go to work for them. We've also had graduates from our public administration program go into that. But you'll see that our federal government and our government contractor numbers here are much higher, typically in that 45 to 60% of our graduates of international affairs go to work for the US federal government right after graduation. And then a little bit more of a smattering of private sector, nonprofits, continuing education, et cetera. That gives you an idea. We'll have class of 2024 numbers. We'll get those up and on our website, typically in early February, right before our interview conference weekends. But we are still gathering that information right now. So who are the employers who hire our students when they graduate? We're going to talk about internships here in just a few minutes, but these are some of the federal opportunities or federal organizations that hire. You'll see a number of intelligence organizations, CIA, National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, or NGA, Defense Intelligence Agency. You'll also see places like the FBI, Sandia National Labs, our other national laboratories, different departments within the federal government, agriculture, commerce, defense, justice, Department of State. We do have some graduate students who've gone to work for the EPA or the Government Accountability Office, GAO. U.S. Space Force is kind of a newer operation. We've had some students who've gone to work for them. We have some who work on Capitol Hill in both Senate and House offices there. And then you can see some of the other places like U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, or the U.S. Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So really just a wide range of opportunities within the federal government. State and local, again, this is just a sampling. We try to show you that you don't have to stay in Texas if you're not from Texas or if you want to get out of Texas when you finish graduate school. But some of the cities and states that have hired our students, City of Austin, Portland, Oregon, Sugar Land down in the Houston area has been a really big employer for our graduate students when they finish up. Frisco Economic Development Corporation, Frisco's up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Maryland, Department of Legislative Services, Nebraska, Emergency Management Agency and Legislature, the New York State Senate Finance Committee, San Antonio Housing Authority, State of Utah. I talked about the Texas Department of Public Safety, Texas General Land Office, Sunset Advisory Commission, Travis County, which is the county that Austin, Texas is in. We've had others who've gone to work for Harris County, which is down in the Houston area, Brazos County, which is the county that we're in here in Bryan College Station. And then last but not least, the Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality. So those are, again, just a sampling of some of the state and local, so a wide range of opportunities for where our graduates go when they finish up. Nonprofit organizations, some of these are going to be very familiar to you, right? Big nonprofit organizations like the American Cancer Society, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, children's centers, Habitat for Humanity. DePelchin is actually a specific children's center, children's hospital, I believe down in the Houston area, if I'm remembering correctly. Houston Food Bank, we've also had graduates go to work for the Austin Food Bank. You also see organizations like associations, the National Association of Latino Community Asset Builders, or the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, the Posse Foundation, a foundation that provides access to education based out of Houston, I believe. And so they have hired our graduate students before. St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, a lot of us are familiar with that, especially if you've stayed up late at any time seeing the sad commercials, tearjerker commercials on TV. We've had students who've gone to work for them and done really great work doing fundraising for them, both domestically and internationally. They actually have an international operation as well, which I think is really cool and something that not many people know about. Samaritan's Purse, they've been in the news a lot lately with the relief efforts in North Carolina. They're based in North Carolina, but do a lot of international work, but they've been doing a lot of work as people recover from Hurricane Helene. Teach for America, the UN World Food Program, and then Western Governors Association. Some of those government contractors and private industry organizations, again, some of these are going to look really familiar to you: Accenture, Baker Tilly US, BP. For those of you that are familiar with the government contractor landscape, especially in the intelligence and defense area, Booz Allen Hamilton is very well known. Chemonics may not be something you've heard of unless you're interested in international development, but Chemonics is a USAID government contractor, so they do a lot of work with USAID. RAND Corporation. Many people don't know that RAND, some people think of RAND as a think tank, and they do have a think tank component, but they also are a private sector employer. MD Anderson Cancer Center down in Houston. And no, you don't have to be a doctor to work for MD Anderson Cancer Center. They do provide a number of programs and resources for our students as well, or for individuals within the community as well. PricewaterhouseCoopers is probably a pretty familiar one to a lot of people as well. So in addition to the careers opportunities that we provide, we also have, I've talked to you a little bit about the leadership program and the writing program. That capstone project we've talked about, these are actually pictures from our students doing some of those things. The top right-hand picture is a group of our students. They're all working now, and a good number of them work in the Texas legislature. They actually did a semester-long capstone in the state capitol in Austin. And so they work there all semester long as part of their capstone while they're taking classes as well. So it's a pretty rigorous program. Bottom left is a picture of one of our students taking Korean with a tutor. So he's working on his Korean language skills. And then the picture to the right is one of our groups of students that went on a study abroad trip. I want to say that's our Egypt trip, but the trips rotate at different times. So I could be wrong about the location of that one, but I think that's correct there. I've mentioned the speakers and conferences. Those are typically hosted by our research institutes, centers, and programs. You can see some of those are our Scowcroft Institute for International Affairs, or our Mosbacher Institute for Trade and Economics, our Women, Peace, and Security program, our Center for Nonprofits and Philanthropy. Networking with alumni and with guests, those speakers and conferences. Oftentimes when speakers come in for that, we will be given the opportunity for small groups of students to meet with those speakers. So that could be anyone from a Condoleezza Rice to, I think we had the president of Taiwan here last week or earlier this week. I can't remember which one. Sometimes our students get to interact with those individuals as well. And so really some great opportunities there. And then we have a whole host of student activities that you can be involved in, from intramural sports to activities doing public service, to being involved in specific things, like I mentioned earlier, fundraising with the Association of Fundraising Professionals, or specific professional networks as you think about international city management or security, or any number of things, cybersecurity, homeland security, artificial intelligence, etc. So just a lot of really great opportunities to build your skills and experiences. In addition to the student activities we have at the Bush School, Texas A&M University has over 1,000 registered or recognized student organizations. So if you can't find something to do in Bryan College Station while you're a graduate student here, you're not looking hard enough, because there's an organization for just about everything. And we also recognize that some of you are going to come in with families, and you're going to come in with other responsibilities, or maybe you're just past that. And that's not something you want to be involved in. And that's perfectly fine as well. But the opportunities do exist. And even within the community, it's a great community to get involved with as well if you want to serve in that way. So we do have full-time career services staff. That's what I started doing here 21 years ago. I came over here from the Career Center on our main campus to provide career advising to our graduate students. And then I've had the privilege of hiring 2 more staff members. Ashley Winterroad does our career programming, and we're going to talk about that here in just a minute. All of our career workshops, all of our training, etiquette dinner, mock interview night, where you have a chance to kind of do a kind of a speed dating kind of format for interviewing. And then also etiquette dinner. And then we also have Michael Cochran, who's our Assistant Director for Employer Relations. He is the one who brings in employers or hosts online information sessions for employers to share about job and internship opportunities with our students. So we've regularly got employers anywhere from 3 to 5 a week coming in or doing webinars for us. So really a lot of great opportunities. We also, all three of us will also meet with you individually to talk to you about your career path, your career plan, what you want to do, and the best way to do that. We also will do resume reviews, cover letter reviews. We have some career interest groups. Sometimes those are assisted through those research centers and institutes. And sometimes we are the ones who are providing that support to those students who are running those. We will give you opportunities to network with others and connect with both students and with alumni. In fact, that's one of my goals when a student comes in to meet with me. My goal is to help them connect with one second-year student who has done the kind of internship that they're looking at doing, and then also connect them with a former student or a graduate of our program who is doing the kind of work that they think they want to do. We just recognize that I can only provide so much information about the value of the work or what you're trying to do and the way to put your best foot forward. And so we want to make sure that we're connecting with people who are in the field that you're interested in. And then we do help you both with your summer internship and your employment search. We don't have a list of jobs for you. We don't have, as I call it, a silver platter with jobs on it. It'd be nice if we did, but we will help you in any way that we can. So if you attend the career workshops offered to you as a first-year student, we have 5 career workshops that Ashley Winter Road manages. She's actually getting close to wrapping those up for this fall semester. But if you attend all 5 of those career workshops and submit the associated deliverables, a resume for review, a LinkedIn profile, a link to your LinkedIn profile, a list of networking contacts that you're reaching out to, and a recorded mock interview, you will have the opportunity to apply for additional funding. So again, if you've attended our previous webinars on applying to our graduate programs, you know about our generous scholarship program. This is in addition to that. So this is an opportunity for you to get some additional funding. And that is if your internship or language immersion are unpaid. Language immersions are always unpaid because you have to pay for them. But if you have completed those 5 workshops in the fall semester, then you can apply for additional funding. I will tell you that $1,000 is typically for a local internship. So we have 3 categories, 1,000 for a local organization that is in a smaller community, 1750 for something in the state of Texas that is in a major metropolitan area, Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, Austin. $2,000 if you are in a major metropolitan area outside of the state of Texas, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, New York City, Chicago, and then up to $2,500 if you are going internationally for either your internship or language immersion. Having said that, those are the categories. The last couple of years, we have had the number of students that has applied has not used up all of that funding. So I've been able to give even more than these categories. There's no guarantee that that'll happen, but I say that to you so that you understand that our goal is not to limit how much we give you. It's actually to put these, let me give you a realistic perspective of what we know we can give you if you do this. And if I can give you more and I can find more, I'll do that. And we apply that across the board. So those categories are not dependent upon your need. Those categories are not dependent upon whether or not you give us a great essay. They are just on, are you doing an unpaid internship or language immersion, and where is it at? And that will determine how much you receive from us if you've completed those career workshops. So our goal is to be generous with that funding to help you cover the cost of doing the required internship. So if you're not familiar with where we are, we like to throw this in here so you have an idea of, okay, if I'm in College Station, what else am I close to? We are actually really centrally located. You'll see the big blue star in the middle. You'll see Houston is down to the southeast from us. Very easy to get to, about an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on where you're going. If you look to the left, the lower left, you'll see that Austin is there and San Antonio are both down there to the southwest. Austin is about an hour and a half. San Antonio is about 2 hours. And then if you look up north, you'll see that Dallas Fort Worth is about 3 hours north of where we are in Bryan College Station. So very close to some major metropolitan areas. Number of students do internships there. A number of our students will end up going to those locations to work, but it just gives you, we like to show you what that looks like so you can see where we're located. So this last summer, our current class of second year students, this is where they interned. They were in 21 cities, 16 different states, 12 different countries on 5 different continents. So you can see that we have a lot of variety in the work. So I don't want you to get the picture that if you come to Bryan College Station, you can only do an internship in the state of Texas. No, we've got students that are interning in Washington State, in Nevada, in California, in Colorado, Missouri, and then all the way over to New Jersey, New Hampshire, down into North Carolina and Georgia. And so you'll see just a wide range of places that people go. This last summer, we had about 140 students that we worked with to help them in their internship. Do you have to come to us? Not at all. Some of you are going to come in with a robust network and you already know what to do there. So not a problem. Sample internship and immersions. We've covered a lot of this already, so I won't spend any more time on this, but it just gives you an idea of what that looks like. Same thing for our international affairs department. Number of great places for those of you looking at language immersions. The most popular languages that our students study are Arabic, Spanish, Russian, and French. German can sometimes sneak in there as well, but those are the most popular ones. The Texas A&M University network is quite robust. The Bush School Network, we're a smaller college within a much larger university. Great thing about that is you're on a part of campus where you don't feel overwhelmed, but you are also part of a larger network of over 500,000 living alumni, and they all love helping Aggies. Aggies love to help Aggies. So it's a great opportunity. Plus, we can connect you with our Bush School alumni network as well. They're very actively engaged. Okay, so that comes to the end of our time today. If you have questions, if they are specific to admissions, we encourage you, make sure you reach out to Ashley or Catherine at bushschooladmissions@tamu.edu. If it's about career services, reach out to me. Make sure you tell me that you're on this webinar today, so I already know what I've told you and I don't regurgitate something you already heard, but that is something that I want you to be aware of as you go through that process. And then I'm going to go up here and I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to try to stop recording.